I jumped out on that road. I got no love you'd call real. Ain't got nobody waiting at home. Running with the devil. I'm gonna tell you one time. Running with the devil. Yes, I am. Yeah. You know I found the simple life once so simple. No, when I jumped out on that road, got no love you'd call real. Got nobody waiting at home. Running with the devil. Oh God, I'm running. Running with the devil. One more time. Running with the devil. Running with the devil. Running with the devil.
Greetings, all. Paladin back with you after a 2-month hiatus, or almost 2 months. Sorry about that. Been busy. All right, I want to get right into it. First thing I want to discuss very, very, very briefly is the circus sideshow that started at the end of last week, carried over into the weekend. I know a lot of people have asked me about it, and I think my answer has got to be the same as what I was told years ago by one of my mentors, and that is just wait, the parade always comes back around. And the message there is that if you don't understand or don't know what you're seeing this time, just sit tight and be patient. You'll get another opportunity, because the show will come back to a city near you and you can watch it again. So that's all I want to say about that. It should be apparent by now, but maybe it's not. Okay. I think the next thing I want to talk about, I got so much to talk about. I'm gonna have to keep this short. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about, I've heard people and read some things about everybody's sort of confused 13 months out from this event, because the things that they've seen and they've read and they've heard don't match up with what the narrative is, whatever that is. If it's the FIT report, the initial report, the final report, the autopsy report, the things are just not matching up. And so the question is why, and I know some of the debunkers, and I want to just divert here for a second. The debunkers I've got a new name for them, and that's called narrative nutters. That conspiracy theory thing was started by the CIA back in the 60s when the Warren Commission report was issued, and some people did actually read the report, and when they did, they knew that the whole Warren Commission report was a fiction. And so the CIA sent around a memo to their agents and their media minions to start using the term conspiracy theorist to marginalize all the people who were questioning the fictional Warren report. So anyway, getting back to that, they want to call us conspiracy nutters. Well, we can call them narrative nutters, because that's essentially what they are. Some of these guys, it's unbelievable to me. Why? Okay, first of all, why do you even watch someone like my channel or anybody else's channel who is actually putting out information that is objective, or that questions the narrative or challenges the narrative? if you don't believe in it? Why do you even spend the time? Some of these people waste, I can't believe how much time they waste on this. And some of these people, God bless them, they could take either side of the flat earth debate and make each sound equally compelling and believable. And what's the point? I mean, seriously, what's the point? Are they paid to be here? Are they paid to do that? I don't understand it. But anyway, taking a long view of this whole situation after 13 months, and I think people get confused, they get frustrated, because it doesn't make sense. Nothing matches up. And that's because I think some people fall into the trap of being limited by the parameters or by that box that they put out there for us. Okay, they've given you a set of what they call facts, what they call evidence, and as you sift through this evidence, you go through this evidence, you're saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't match up, this doesn't prove true. I mean, these people are out there saying the wind blew the door shut or Paddock closed the door from the inside. I mean, these are just ridiculous things. No, they didn't say that. No, they didn't see that. No, they didn't hear that. That's an optical illusion, yada, yada, yada. I mean, you name it, they've said it. But when you look at it, why does the LVMPD have to be taken to court to release information? Why does the coroner's office need to be taken to court to release information? And then when it is released, it's redacted, it's censored, the videos have been cut. We don't see ballistics. We don't see gunshot residue evidence on Paddock. I mean, we don't even see, and this is one of the things, MGM, they've provided Campos and Schuck for us, okay, with Ellen. All right, a controlled interview that we all know is BS. And then I think Schuck maybe did a few more interviews. But anyway, nobody else, no other security officers, nobody, okay, except for some chosen video surveillance of Paddock arriving at the valet and taking in luggage, at the elevator, taking up luggage, at the self park, bringing in luggage on the elevator. That's all they show us. Okay, they're trying to convince us that, yeah, he was bringing it up. And reality is we don't know if he brought those guns up or not because we see luggage, we see bags, but we don't see any guns. We don't see any ammunition. We don't see any of that. All we see is bags. And the thing of it is, some of those timestamps are distorted, and we don't even know if they're accurate. The ones that we can read, we don't know if they're accurate. So at the end of the day, not only do you not show you don't have irrefutable proof that Paddock brought the guns up, you also don't have any irrefutable proof that Paddock shot the weapons, and you also don't have any irrefutable proof that the weapons that they found in 135 and 134 were the weapons used to shoot anybody or wound anybody. Okay. Anyway, and as I've said before, Paddock, as it stands now, Paddock, if he was alive, could beat this in court easy. With just a competent attorney, he could beat this. Okay, the next big issue that we're going to be addressing, and not me, well, I am, yeah, I'm going to address it, but I mean the next big thing that's going to drop, I supposedly in most people's minds, is the FBI report. I expect nothing from an evidentiary standpoint. I expect it, but rather I expect it to be psychobabble. It's probably going to be the behavioral analysis unit, doing their contortionist routine of trying to jump through hoops and explain, Paddock and why he did this. And that's going to be worth the read. Because that'll be more fiction. I'm sure they'll talk about the Paddock family history. Were there criminals? Yeah, there were criminals. Dad, Big Daddy, and I guess to a certain extent Bruce. He's had some problems in California, kind of a history of things. But they're not violent. They're just con men. Dad was a con man, ran a bingo parlor, wanted to get rich, wanted to get, robbed a bank. Then he was sent to Club Fed, and one day he just decided, I'm going to leave. And, hung out in Oregon for years and years and years. And a guy like that, you have to know it was him. So anyway, that's a whole nother story. We're not going to get into it. But anyway, Uh, the one thing I do want to bring out about the Paddock family history is the use of aliases that Big Daddy did. And they were, a lot of them had to do with his sons. And supposedly, as the story goes, only Bruce and Eric met Dad, and Stephen and Patrick didn't. And that in and of itself is kind of strange. And why is Patrick such a mystery? Why is there we've never even seen a picture of him, to my knowledge. No pictures, no voice. Supposedly, I think there was a report put out initially that he was contacted by a reporter, and he said, "I'm estranged from the family, and I don't want to talk about it, and I don't know anything about it," and yada yada yada. Yet, there's no, in this surveillance age that we're going through, there's no video, there's no pictures, there's no, with this, all the cell phone cameras that everybody has, and we have never seen Patrick at all. That's just very strange. Then we know all about the issues with the fishing licenses, filled out by two separate people, signed by two separate people, listing Texas addresses but using a California driver's license. And the one Texas address, I think, that was listed in 2010 is the wrong address. It's listed as 314 Keswick Lane, supposed to be 317 Keswick Lane. Then we know the passport pic that they say is Stephen looks more like Eric than it does Stephen, but it does. I don't think it's Eric either. So who is it? Is it Patrick, or is it someone else? And nobody's addressing this. Nobody is answering those questions. And then we have the three females registered to 135. Boy, we have Paddock changed from room 235 to 135. We have Mary Lou registered to 134, although supposedly that was done by Paddock when she supposedly wasn't there. How does this happen? Can somebody explain how this happens? I mean, I was under the understanding that you had to be there in person to do this, but nobody will explain this. And then to take all this into consideration, and you have to realize that call that went out at 11:05 about who was registered to the room, which was Paddock and the three females, and that they checked in on the 25th and checked out, were scheduled to check out on the 2nd. I mean, this was broadcast on the radio. Okay, other officers heard this information, and why didn't any of them talk about it? I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, and how do you explain that? There's one big bedroom suite in 135. I guess Paddock was in there, or were the three females in there and Paddock slept on the couch? How did that work? And then halfway through the stay, Paddock decides he's going to go get another room, and he's going to let the girls stay in 135 and he's going to be in 134. Doesn't look that way. So, I mean, I haven't heard anybody try to tackle this one, even the debunkers. And, based on the fact that if you've read some of the witness interviews, you'll see where Metro went around to some of the other casino hosts in Las Vegas who knew Paddock and were trying to get them to admit to fixing Paddock up with prostitutes, and not a one of them said that. Not a one of them would confirm that. And the reason they didn't was probably because it wasn't true, although I kind of have a hard time believing they would admit that anyway, but it doesn't make sense. I mean, Mary Lou says, well, Paddock wasn't intimate with her anymore, so he's going to have three hookers up there? I don't think so. Just not going to happen. So then we get to the point where, okay, Paddock's motive. What is the motive? Well, he's mad at the casinos, right? That's why he shot up the venue as opposed to went down and shot up the casino. And that's why he paid off his markers, right? Because he was mad at the casino. It seems to me like if he was mad at the casinos, he would have just run up the markers all over town and then left them. But he didn't. But of course, if you were planning on getting away, planning on making your escape, it would be very embarrassing to leave markers all around town and have people looking for you, right? Because if they found you alive when you were supposed to be dead, that would blow the whole thing up. So to me, it makes more sense that Paddock was going to get away, and that's why he paid off his markers because he didn't want anybody coming to look for him. So, none of it makes sense. So my only advice is just, try to open yourself up and consider everything as a possibility, because if you don't, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to go through these periods where nothing's going to make sense. Well, that's because you're not being given all the information. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, or vice versa. It's like you're trying to work a 1,000 piece picture puzzle, and you've only got 20 pieces. It's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. And I think you've got to understand that, there was foreknowledge out there. Okay, there was foreknowledge. We know. You think it's just a coincidence that George Soros shorted almost 2 million shares of stock? You think it was a coincidence that Murin and some of the other board of directors and officers dumped a bunch of hundreds of thousands of shares of stock in September, before the ex-dividend date and after there was a announcement of the stock buyback program? You think that was all a coincidence? You think it was a coincidence that Paddock talked to the hairdresser and Mary Lou came in and he's talking about shooting people from a elevated position and how they shouldn't put those outside concerts, and there's a mention to Mary Lou, and Mary Lou kind of shrugs her shoulders or whatever, and Paddock says, oh, well, don't worry, she won't be here. That shows foreknowledge. And then we've got the IHOP situation, which, according to the FIT report, Paddock wasn't in Las Vegas at that point in time. He was in Mesquite. Yet this lady says that she saw Paddock talking to someone. They're talking about Ruby Ridge and gun control and government suppression and all this other stuff. And you've got the Bass Pro Shop situation where the convict or the criminal or the inmate, whatever you want to call him, in Clark County Detention Center goes through this scenario where he was selling schematics for some device that would turn rifles or whatever into automatic or semi-automatic weapons, and Paddock met him at the Bass Pro Shop, and he describes Paddock, and it's not the Paddock we know. He says he's 45 to 50, blonde hair. So it sounds to me like the only one. Oh, and I think there was a Uber driver that indicated that he picked up Mary Lou from the airport with Steven, and they were talking about it. And so, like I say, the Bass Pro Shop, most likely that was not Paddock. The IHOP, it's hard to say if that was Paddock. The hairdresser, I think, definitely was Paddock. So if these other two people weren't Paddock, what was going on? What the hell was going on? All right, I want to get into the fuel tank shots. So watch your screen here. All right, this is page 35 of the FIT report. Now I'm going to blow this up just a little. Okay, so here we see the shots. All right, both of them, the top. Well, they call this the top one, or the upper shot and the lower shot. Okay, and here they are close up. All right, now I've had someone a long time ago, months ago, make me a video on this because I said I don't think shooting from an elevated position on the 32nd floor, and this I can't tell, 6 inches, maybe a foot, I don't know. Anyway, with this overhang, I just don't think that shot was possible. So anyway, what they basically did for me is, as I said, I need to know the direction of the shot, where it came from. Well, as you can see, the residue here, the darkest area of this is to the left and above the bullet strike, which would indicate that the position of the shooter was here to the right and lower, because you've got, this is most of where most of the debris is, or most of the residue is. You've got some on the bottom, you've got some over here, but the majority of it is right here. Okay, as opposed to this one, you look at this one, the majority of it is lower. And if you compare the two, this one looks bigger. This hole looks bigger than this hole, obviously. Although that could be distorted by the by the camera and the lens and how close they are. Although this one looks further away than this one, yet this one looks bigger than this one, right? And this one looks like it could be from a higher elevation because most of the residue is below the shot, where this one is just the opposite. So anyway, I just wanted to show that. I don't know that anybody is talking about that, and if they have, I haven't seen it. But and maybe the video that was done for me, I'll show it at some point. But anyway, it pretty much concludes that the shooter for this shot was at a lower elevation, and they even pinpoint an area where it may have come from. But I think it's obvious based on this residue that it came from lower to the right, because the majority of this is up to the left, and I don't even think this is the same ammunition. I don't think it's the same. Okay. Now the next thing we want to talk about is the lawsuit. I think Catherine Lombardo a week or so ago, hallelujah, MGM's got terrorism insurance. Well, you should have known that, Catherine, when they filed the court case, the federal court case citing the Safety Act, because that does utilize the terrorism insurance, and that's integral to that whole lawsuit. So you should have known that. However, beyond that, you should have also went to MGM's annual report, and I've got that here, and this is interesting. I'll show you the front page. The Business of Wow, WOW. Isn't that interesting? This is their annual report for 2017. Now, just to kind of digress a little bit, corporate returns, if you're on a calendar year, which means January 1st to December 31st, your taxes have to be filed by March 15th, a month sooner or earlier than individual returns. So in this case, and I think if I right click, and I'm not going to do that, but if I right click this, I think we'll see that this was created on March 20th. So anyway, this is the annual report. Now, there's the generally accepted accounting principles. There's the Financial Accounting Standards Board. These people are the ones who kind of put out the guidelines for accountants, okay? So one of the guidelines is regarding contingent liabilities, which is if you know that you've got an extraordinary item that might hit the books, either profit or loss wise. It could be, most likely in most cases it's a lawsuit, but it could be something else like a product defect that you had to recall your product. And it's going to cost you money. You got obsolete inventory you're going to have to write off. There could be various other reasons. Primarily it's lawsuits. You have to start reserving money. Well, first of all, you got to disclose it, okay? And that's any public corporation, publicly traded corporation, has to do that through the SEC, and I think that's on the 10K. I didn't go look, but I'm sure MGM probably disclosed this in a 10K, probably, I don't know, last year, I would imagine. Anyway, on their annual report, they do talk about it, okay? And we're going to go to that. Okay. And I went to the wrong. All right. So we have their statements, financial statements. Okay, this is the balance sheet, assets and liabilities. Okay, and shareholders' equity. Okay, and down here they have a note, commitments and contingencies. Now, notes to the financial statements, where they are pretty numerous, are basically write-ups for explanations for certain things. Well, this one, commitments and contingencies, they don't have anything there, okay, as far as the liability goes. But if you go to note 12, which we're going to do that, Okay. Okay, so note 12, commitments and contingencies. Okay, if we go down here, we're going to see October 1 litigation. Okay, so you can read this. This is on page 67. It's actually, that's 67 of the annual report. It's actually 71 of the PDF if you go download it. But anyway, this basically, and this is of course lawyer speak. This is all written by their attorneys, and they're talking about, about the potential for lawsuits and the lawsuits that were filed in Clark County and also LA County. And they were some of them have been voluntarily dismissed through the probate process, but they anticipate that they would be refiling in similar form. Additional lawsuits related to this incident may be filed in the future. Okay, so the company is currently unable to reliably predict the developments in, outcome of, and economic costs and other consequences. Okay, so this is all lawyer speak. They're trying to disclose everything. However, this highlighted sentence is worth repeating, and that is the company intends to defend against these lawsuits and ultimately believes it should prevail, but litigation of this type is inherently unpredictable. Okay. Then it cites ASC 450-20, which is Accounting Standards Codification 450-20, which talks about contingent liabilities. You've got to disclose them. In some cases, if you know what it is, you've got to start reserving money to pay for it. You expense it on one side, you set it up as a liability, a payable on the other, and then at such point as in time where you pay it, then you credit cash and debit the liability and wipe it out. Okay, I just want to get to this part because this is really telling. This to me tells you everything you want to know about MGM. In the event the company incurs any liability, the company believes it is unlikely it would incur losses in connection with these claims in excess of its insurance coverage. In addition, the company's general liability insurance coverage provides, as part of the contractual duty to defend, payment of legal fees and associated costs incurred to defend covered lawsuits that are filed arising from October 1st, 2017 shooting in Vegas. Payment of such fees and costs is in addition to and not limited by the limits of the insurance policies and does not erode the total liability coverage available. The insurance carriers have not expressed any reservation of rights or coverage defenses that indicate they dispute coverage under the applicable policies. Okay, translated, what this means is, don't worry, shareholders. We not only think that we're not going to have to pay anything out of pocket because our liability will be limited to just what our insurance policies cover, and we've already paid those premiums. In addition to that, don't worry again because the attorneys and associated fees regarding filing lawsuits and serving victims and survivors, the cost of that is not going to be borne by MGM, but it will be covered by the insurance. And not only that, we have also talked to our insurance carrier, and our insurance carrier says that they're not going to challenge any of these claims, essentially. Okay? So that tells you everything you want to know. They don't give a damn about anybody but themselves. All right? Now, they filed in federal court, and they filed under the Safety Act, and they cited sections 441 through 444, and I'm not going to go through those. However, I am going to show you a very interesting PDF, that a 5-page PDF put out by Willis Law Firm regarding the Safety Act. Okay. And what is a designated act of terrorism? An act of terrorism is any act that the Secretary of Homeland Security determines meets the requirements. The act does not differentiate foreign or domestic. Okay, so this means that the Secretary of Homeland Security has to declare this a terrorist act, and as far as I'm concerned, that has not happened. Okay. But if she did, then here is, and this is kind of an interesting, this is kind of a very interesting PDF that you might want to go through. But anyway, the liability protections and defenses provided under the Safety Act. In other words, if it falls under the Safety Act, here's the benefits that you get. If you either contract with someone who has the designation given by Homeland Security, or you are the party who has the designation. Okay, there's a maximum cap on the liability equal to the amount of terrorism liability insurance required for the qualified products or services involved, exclusive jurisdiction in federal court, which means all the state court cases get dropped and don't get litigated. Punitive damage claims are barred, compensatory damages barred, prejudgment interest barred, non-economic damages barred unless the plaintiff was physically harmed. And by their definition, non-economic damages are defined under the Act and include things such as pain and suffering, mental anguish, and loss of consortium. So these are emotional damages. You can't get anything for that either. Prohibition on joint and several liabilities for non-economic damages. In other words, only that percentage of the ultimate claim amount that is directly attributed to a defendant's negligence is recoverable. This is interesting. And other plaintiff recoveries, the Safety Act provides that a defendant's liability will be reduced for other compensation available to the claimant from other collateral sources, such as insurance recoveries, other defendants, etc. Okay, so what this means is basically the court will come up with a total amount. The insurance people will pay for it, and you will be limited. And if you're one of the three defendants here, which is MGM, Live Nation, and CSC, then you're going to be limited in your exposure because whatever the total amount is gets carved out by the money that's paid by your co-defendants. Pretty good deal. Okay. And I got to say, I was just looking through this and I came across, where is this? I couldn't believe it. Okay, we're going to highlight this. Because certain anti-terrorism related products and services, e.g. weapons, electric fences, chemicals, explosives, x-rays, and vaccines, have inherent risks, it is important to understand that the Safety Act's protections will not apply to any claim that does not stem from a designated act of terrorism. Let's read those inherent risks again. Weapons, yes. Explosives, yes. But electric fences have inherent risks. Chemicals have inherent risks. X-rays have inherent risks. And vaccines. I just found that beyond the pale. Oh, gosh, don't get me started on that stuff. Okay. To wind this up, I just want to say that don't get discouraged. Take the long view. Step back. Look at the overall picture. You can easily identify what doesn't make sense and what's not fitting the narrative and go from there, okay? Try to stay objective. Consider everything. Be willing to consider everything. Take the emotion out of it. Stop blaming Paddock. We don't know if Paddock really did it. I mean, here's let me find this. I jotted some things down. Okay, let's just, I want to leave you with this. And before I do, I just want to say that, this thing with whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. If you people in Vegas who are listening to this, if you adhere to that, we're never going to get this solved. We're never going to figure this out, and I guarantee it's going to happen again, okay? So try to get past that. Try to get over that. Try to save your city and try to speak up and do something, okay? My email is always listed in the description box. It'll always be out there. We're talking to people from Vegas all the time, getting information. So if you got a story to tell, we'll keep it confidential if that's your wish. Contact us, okay? All right. So I just want to leave you with these thoughts. So you see the scenario, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so sometimes when you get to a point in an investigation where there are things that don't make sense, you take sometimes some scenarios and you plug them in to the situation and you say, okay, if this is true, would it fit? Would it make sense? Okay, so let me just throw a few things out there to you. What if there were shots fired on the strip after 10:16, after 10:30, after 11, after 11:30, after midnight? Yeah, think about that. What if that were the case, given what they're telling us is the narrative, all right? What if the window in 135 wasn't actually broken until after the breach? How does that change things? What if Mary Lou was in town? How does that change things? What if the first shots that we hear during Jason Aldean's Barstool song, or even later, what if the first shots killed Paddock, whoever that is in 135 laying on the ground, laying on the floor? What if he had help? How does that change things? And I could go on. I could give you 100 examples. Would any of this change anything in your mind? Would that change the way you look at this? I think so. Okay. I'm sure I missed some things, but I'm going to cut this off. This has been long enough. Stay with us. We got other things coming. I'm going to do a new autopsy video. Going to do a Paddock autopsy video now that the final report's out and we got additional information and a whole bunch of others. So anyway, Bobby, cue up the music. Paladin out.